Prison Break, the inside story of the most brazen U.S. jail escape in decades, the hole in the wall. Before we dive into tonight's story, hit that subscribe button, because once you hear what happened inside Clinton Correctional Facility, you'll realize this isn't just a prison break. It's a masterclass in manipulation, betrayal, and cold-blooded strategy. It was the early morning of June 6, 2015, in the quiet town of Dannemora, New York, a place so small and frozen in time that locals joked the prison was its only heartbeat. Inside the towering walls of Clinton Correctional Facility, two men were about to make history. Richard Matt, 49 years old, charming, ruthless, and an artist behind bars, and David Sweat, younger, quieter, but every bit as calculating. Both were serving life sentences for murder. Neither planned to die in prison. The night air was still. Guards yawned as they did their rounds. In cell 23, Matt whispered, "You ready?" Sweat nodded. Beneath the dull hum of fluorescent lights, they removed a vent cover that looked ordinary to anyone passing by. Behind it was a tunnel carved through cold steel and concrete, a hole they'd been perfecting for months. No one suspected a thing. Because their secret weapon wasn't inside the cell, it was working in the tailor's shop. Joyce Mitchell, a middle-aged prison seamstress with an ordinary life, had been flirting with danger for months. At first, she saw Richard Matt as a charming inmate who painted her portraits and complimented her hair. But soon, the compliments became secrets, and the secrets became favors. Small ones at first, a screwdriver here, a set of blueprints there. Then came the real request, hacksaw blades, smuggled inside frozen hamburger meat. Mitchell told herself it was harmless. Just helping a friend. But deep down, she knew she was in over her head. Still, she couldn't resist. Matt's words made her feel alive, like someone finally saw her. By spring, the inmates' escape plan had become an obsession. They studied guard rotations, memorized the maze of tunnels beneath the prison, and practiced cutting through steel quietly, timing each slice to the sound of clanging pipes. The plan was insane. It shouldn't have worked. But when everyone around you believes you're powerless, you can get away with anything. The pair worked night after night, cutting deeper into the prison's bowels. Sparks flew in the darkness. Each inch closer to freedom carried the taste of danger. They left decoys, neatly made beds, fake heads molded from soap and hair. By day, they were model inmates. By night, they were ghosts moving through the walls. Mitchell's nerves began to crack. Matt told her they'd run away together once they were free, across the border to Mexico. A fantasy. But she believed it. She even agreed to be their getaway driver. The thought of escape, of leaving her dull life behind, thrilled her. Until the morning of the escape, when reality sank in. June 6th. The men were gone. Their cells, empty. The dummy heads lay on their pillows, half smiling. A guard tapped the bars, frowned, and pulled back the blanket. What he saw made his stomach drop. Two lifers had vanished from a maximum security prison. It wasn't just an escape, it was a national embarrassment. Alarms blared across Dannemora. Helicopters filled the sky. Officers scoured fields, forests, and backroads. The governor called it a real-life Shawshank. Reporters flooded the town. Everyone asked the same question: how did two convicted killers just disappear? Meanwhile, deep in the Adirondack wilderness, Matt and Sweat were already miles away, moving through dense forest, guided only by the sound of trains and their thirst for freedom. They had no phones, no food, just the promise of the unknown. But as they trudged through the darkness, Sweat turned to Matt and said, "She's not coming, is she?" Matt's smile faded. "We don't need her." Back at the prison, investigators began unraveling the impossible. The vents. The catwalks. The steam pipes. A man-sized tunnel running under layers of steel. Every discovery made it worse. This wasn't a lucky escape, it was an inside job. And in the tailor's shop, Joyce Mitchell sat in an interrogation room, her hands shaking as officers asked the question she dreaded most: how much did you help them? She hesitated. "I didn't think they'd actually do it." But when detectives checked the frozen hamburger meat in her work freezer, they found the truth, and the tools that made history. The breakout had exposed more than a hole in a wall. It exposed a system built on routine, trust, and arrogance. But this was only the beginning. Because just as police closed in on the first lead, a forest ranger radioed in a chilling report: a cabin had been broken into deep in the woods, and food supplies were missing. The manhunt had begun, and it would end in blood, the hunt in the shadows. The news spread like wildfire. 2 convicted murderers had vanished from a fortress once thought impenetrable. The Clinton Correctional Facility went from being a place of discipline to a symbol of humiliation overnight. TV crews camped outside its massive gates. Sirens screamed through the dark Adirondack forests. And every rustling branch, every flicker of light in the woods made people in Dannemora flinch. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo arrived on site the next day, walking the same tunnel the escapees had crawled through. He ducked under pipes, stepped over the cut steel, and muttered, "Incredible. Like something out of a movie." But this was no script, this was real, and 2 dangerous men were now ghosts on the loose. Richard Matt and David Sweat had planned meticulously, but not perfectly. The escape route had taken them under the prison walls, through a steam pipe, and out a manhole that opened onto the town's quiet backstreet. Their plan had relied on Joyce Mitchell waiting with a car. But when panic overtook her that morning, she never showed. That mistake forced the fugitives into the wilderness, cold, hungry, and hunted. By the 3rd night, they were moving silently through thick forest, surviving on candy bars stolen from hunting cabins. Matt was older, struggling with exhaustion, but his mind was sharp. Sweat was disciplined, the muscle, the endurance. He carried a small hacksaw blade still hidden in his shoe, a symbol of their impossible success. Yet as each day passed, tension grew. They were partners in escape, but not in trust. Meanwhile, hundreds of officers, state troopers, and federal agents flooded the area. The New York State Police set up checkpoints across multiple counties. Dogs sniffed through mud, choppers hovered overhead, and heat sensors scanned the tree lines. The manhunt grew into one of the largest in U.S. history, a $1 million operation stretching across forests, lakes, and even the Canadian border. For days, nothing. No tracks. No sightings. Just rumors. Locals whispered about strange noises, cabins broken into, food missing. Each report sent SWAT teams racing, only to find empty footprints fading in the rain. Joyce Mitchell finally broke under interrogation. Her story spilled out in fragments: how she'd fallen for Matt's charm, how he made her feel special, how she smuggled the blades inside hamburger meat. When she spoke of the escape plan, of driving north to meet them, her voice trembled. "I was supposed to be there," she said, "but I couldn't do it. I just couldn't." Investigators realized she wasn't the only weak link. Another prison employee, Jean Palmer, had unknowingly helped by carrying tools hidden in frozen meat through the gates. A few simple lapses in judgment, that's all it took to unravel the system. 10 days into the manhunt, a hunter reported hearing gunshots echoing near Owl's Head, about 20 miles west of the prison. Officers swarmed the area, combing through miles of terrain. Deep in the forest, they found an abandoned campfire, cigarette butts, and footprints. The chase was back on. Inside the woods, the fugitives were beginning to unravel. Sweat wanted to stay hidden, to think, to plan. But Matt was reckless, drinking stolen whiskey and humming songs by the fire. Their bond, once unbreakable, was now fraying under paranoia. Sweat accused Matt of slowing them down. Matt accused Sweat of wanting to leave him behind. One night, as rain fell hard and cold, they found an empty cabin and broke in. Inside, they discovered food, maps, and a rifle. Matt picked it up, smiling like a predator who had just remembered his nature. Sweat stared at him across the dim light. "Don't do anything stupid," he warned. But Matt was already drunk on freedom and power. He began firing shots into the darkness, laughing at the echo. Somewhere in those trees, a trooper heard it. The sound that would end everything. By the next morning, the forest was alive with movement. Officers closed in from all directions. Helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights slicing through mist. Matt and Sweat split up, one heading west, one north. Days later, a trooper spotted movement near Malone, New York. Through binoculars, he saw a man stumbling out of the trees, holding a stolen shotgun. It was Richard Matt. The trooper called for backup. A single shout cut through the stillness, "Drop the weapon." Matt turned, raised his gun, and in one flash, the manhunt's silence shattered. Shots rang out. When the smoke cleared, Richard Matt was dead, sprawled in the grass, eyes open toward the freedom he'd never reach. But David Sweat was still out there, alive, running, and desperate. His capture wouldn't come quietly. And when they finally caught up to him, the truth about their escape, and everything behind it, would come crashing down like a hammer, the last mile. For 23 days, the forests of upstate New York had been holding their breath. The manhunt had stretched across counties, through swamps, over ridgelines. Thousands of officers, dozens of helicopters, and the eyes of an entire nation were fixed on one question: where is David Sweat? Sweat had been running alone since the day his partner, Richard Matt, was gunned down. He was 35 years old, lean, methodical, and now utterly consumed by survival. He moved by night, slept under fallen logs, and drank rainwater from his cupped hands. Each crack of a twig made his pulse spike. Each passing helicopter light forced him deeper into the mud. In the chaos of the search, he'd managed to elude entire patrol lines. He stripped his prison clothes, traded them for stolen jeans, and used stolen maps from cabins to stay off the grid. But the woods were closing in on him: mosquitoes, hunger, exhaustion, and the knowledge that Matt was dead. Freedom was supposed to feel sweet. Instead, it tasted like fear. Back in Dannemora, the town tried to breathe again. Joyce Mitchell had been charged and led away in handcuffs, her face pale, eyes hollow. Reporters shouted questions about love, about guilt, about betrayal. "Did you know they'd kill anyone to get out?" one asked. She didn't answer. Inside command tents, investigators studied every footprint, every cabin break-in. Sweat was moving northeast, toward the Canadian border, a desperate push for safety. But Canada was 40 miles of wilderness away, and the state troopers knew it. They had roadblocks in every direction, drones in the sky, dogs in the brush. June 28, 2015. A humid Sunday afternoon. Sergeant J. Cook, a veteran trooper, was patrolling a rural road near Constable, New York. It was quiet, too quiet. As he drove past an open field, something caught his eye: a man in camouflage walking alone, head down, a large backpack slung over one shoulder. Cook slowed his car. His instincts screamed. He pulled over, stepped out, and shouted, "Hey! Come here a minute." The man froze. He looked up, and for a split second, their eyes met. It was him. David Sweat. Sweat bolted into the field. Cook drew his sidearm and ran after him. The field was wide and exposed, there was nowhere to hide. Sweat sprinted hard, adrenaline surging through his starved body. Cook yelled again, "Stop! State police!" But Sweat kept running, desperate to reach the tree line, desperate to vanish one last time. Cook fired once, missing. The second shot hit Sweat square in the torso, tearing through his shoulder. He collapsed face first into the grass. When troopers reached him, Sweat was alive, gasping, blood soaking into the earth. For the first time in 23 days, the chase was over. He was taken to Albany Medical Center under heavy guard. As doctors worked, officers stood watch outside his door. When Sweat regained consciousness, investigators began to unravel the truth straight from his mouth. He told them about the tunnels, how they'd used a hacksaw to cut through steel pipes, how they followed steam tunnels, how they'd popped the final manhole in the dead of night. He explained how Joyce Mitchell smuggled tools and how another guard unknowingly carried the packages through the gates. He even detailed their plan to kill Mitchell's husband if she joined them on the run. The picture was darker than anyone had imagined. This wasn't luck, it was seduction, manipulation, and months of psychological control. The governor held a press conference that night. "The system failed," he said bluntly. And we're going to make sure it never happens again. Over the next weeks, Clinton Correctional Facility underwent sweeping reforms, new surveillance, random staff searches, tighter security. But for Dannemora's residents, the damage lingered. Many never forgot the sound of helicopters at night or the fear that two killers could be lurking in their backyards. Richard Matt was buried without ceremony. David Sweat returned to a life sentence, this time in solitary confinement, locked behind reinforced glass with cameras watching 24 hours a day. Joyce Mitchell served her sentence for aiding the escape, her mugshot a reminder of how ordinary temptation can ignite catastrophe. And yet, even years later, people still whisper about it, about the charm of Richard Matt, the quiet brilliance of Sweat, and the woman who risked everything for a lie. Because in the end, the most dangerous prison isn't made of bars or steel. It's made of desire. And for those who cross that line, freedom doesn't save you, it exposes you. If you thought this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next. Hit subscribe, because the next escape story might be even darker.